Welcome back. This is the fold over elastic video, or FOE, and this is for the leg portion. You should have a front and your back stitched together with your gusset, and you need your two FOE elastic pieces according to your cutting chart. An FOE is just an elastic with no raw edges. And there's a fold in the center, a pre-folded fold. And essentially what we want to do with it is fold it over the raw edges of our undie, and that'll conceal those raw edges without having to stitch anything and turn anything. We cannot do it in one step though. If you are super good at it, you might be able to fold it over, clip it on, and sew it on in one step. I'll never be able to get it that way, just because, especially with like a slinky, slippery fabric, and this FOE being not very wide, and this isn't straight, it's a curve, and you have to stretch the elastic as you go. There's just no way to keep this inside of here, no matter how much you pin or how much you clip. So we're going to put it on in two steps. We'll be stitching with a kind of a longer basting stitch inside the fold, and then on our second pass we'll fold it over, and then we'll go with our zigzag across it, catching both pieces, and that way we know that every little edge of our undie is inside the elastic. We're going to do this in the round because this is pretty flat, and when we stitch these together and open those up, they're not going to create much bulk, so it's nicer in the round. So that being said, you're going to fold it together, wrong sides together, and you're going to straight stitch this end with your, I guess not a straight stitch, your stretch stitch, sorry. You're going to do that to both ends with your stretch stitch so that we can open that seam. And then we need to do our panty the same way. We're just going to fold it up and stitch both of those side seams together. So for my side seams, I'm going to go ahead and serge, and then I'll lay it over one way and top stitch it down. You can do it with your machine, just like the elastic, and open that seam and top stitch both sides down, or you can do it with your overcast and then fold it to one side and top stitch it down. I fold my seams toward the back. All right, so after you get those stitched up, we'll be right back. Okay, we've got our side seams serged and top stitched down. Top stitching is optional here, but it helps reinforce your seam so you're not just relying on one seam to keep it from stretching. It also keeps this inside nice and flat, so it's not all floppy when you wash it or when you wear it and it gets twisted up. And it's also helpful when we're putting on our leg bindings and our waistband, that that's nice and flat and you don't have to try and open it or decide which way it goes or one way or the other. You've already decided and it's down and out of the way and you don't have to worry about it. We're going to take some color-coded pins and we're going to quarter our elastic. And where we put that seam, I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to put a blue pin in here to hold it down. I'm going to fold that back where the seam is. I'm going to find the front, and that's just where it naturally folds together, and I'll mark that with a pink pin. I'm going to open that up and put those pins together. And I'll mark each side with a green pin. So I have my 4/4 of my leg band, I need to do the same with the leg opening of my undie. So I'm going to use the side seam as my back, so that's where my blue pin will go. And then I'm just going to naturally let that lay. So notice you can't match those curves up, they're very different. But by folding it in half and letting gravity do the work for you, you can find where your front pin goes. And that one's pink. You can match your front pin to your side seam and then find that natural fold. That one where the gusset is, it kind of curves up together, so that one's pretty easy to find. And mark that side with a green pin. And then do the same on the other side. And then these are also two different curves again. And just let it, where it folds naturally, mark your side. All right, so make sure your undie is right side out. We're going to be putting the wrong side of your bottom half of your elastic to the right side of the undie, and you're just going to match up your colored pins. So I'm matching up my seams, and then I'm also matching up that raw edge to where the fold in the elastic is. And you'll notice that you're running out of room to pin because we're getting smaller here. I put that on wrong because I didn't put it all the way around first. There we go. Okay, now we can match up that seam again. And we're going to go around. Just match your pin to your pin with your raw edge next to the fold. Remembering the right side of our undie should be touching the wrong side of the elastic. So I've got my pink pins matched, the raw edge of my undie next to the fold. And then I have one more pin here. You'll notice how all of those colored pins matched up, and that's why I use the different colors in certain places. That way I know when I'm putting it together, when all of the same color pins go together, I know that I've done it correctly. So now we're going to go in, we're going to put some helper pins in between these pins. That just helps us at the machine so we don't have such a far place to stretch and kind of finagle. We're going to do some of the finagling here. So all I want you to do is grab a section with a pin in each hand and just gently pull that elastic until the elastic is the same length as the undie, and just grab yourself a spot in the middle there where they touch each other. Line up the raw edge with the fold and put another pin. Now when we're at the machine, we just have this small section to work with at each point. So we're going to go around the undie and do that. Again, just stretching that elastic gently till it meets the size. And matching the raw edge to the fold line. One more time. Okay, so we're all attached. If you look at it from the right side, your elastic is hanging off. If you look at it from the wrong side, your raw edge of your undie should be right at the fold line. I'm going to stitch mine from the inside, so I'm going to put my foot on the inside and then I'm going to go around the circle that way. And I'm just going to keep my raw edge on the fold. And when I'm going around these curves, yes, I have to stretch my elastic, but I don't want to stretch my elastic out straight and then sew that line straight. See how we have a curve right there? Because it's coming up toward the booty of the undie. We want to make sure to adjust that and pull that down and follow the curve of the undie while stretching the elastic. So I'm going to sink my needles here at my blue pin, and I'm going to pull this gently so it's the same size, and I'm going to stitch that down. I'm going to use my lightning bolt, but I'm going to lengthen it to about a 4.5. So I'm using it as a basting stitch, but it's still a stretch stitch that I can leave in here and don't have to remove. So we're going to stitch that on, and then we'll meet up again. All right, I am stitched all the way around. You'll see that stitching in there. So I've just stretch stitch, but with a basting length onto that elastic. Okay, and then from the right side, this is what it looks like. And you can hardly see any of that stitching because I used a matching color. So all we have left to do is fold it over and top stitch it. So make sure you're just folding it on the pre-fold that's already there. This is where my gusset is attached. And you'll see it's not folding over, so like when I fold it, there's a little bump there. And that's just because a little bit of my gusset is sticking above the fold. So I'm just gonna trim it slightly. And that was outside of my stitching, so I didn't clip any stitches. So now when I go back and fold that, that's a smoother fold. It's not bumping out and it's folded right on the line. When you're on your gusset, you had 2 layers of fabric, so make sure to check on your outside that both layers got covered by the outside of the elastic. So I'm going to top stitch from the outside this time on the right side of the fabric, just like you would a regular top stitch. And I'm going to use a zigzag. You can try and use a straighter stretch stitch like the lightning bolt and just edge stitch, but you have to make sure that you catch the underside of your edge. So for me, a zigzag, I'm going back and forth. I know I'm going to catch all the pieces. I'm using a white thread on this really light pink FOE, so it's not really going to show. And my zigzag is a stretch stitch. So if you are trying to do that with a straight stitch, you're going to end up breaking later. So like I've said before, my zigzag is my go-to undie stitch. We have that FOE stitched all the way around our leg. There's what the zigzag looks like. And you don't even notice that basting stitch that we did first. If at your fold, your little ends are sticking out, you can trim those right off without clipping your stitches, and it's not going to harm anything. All right, so do the same thing to the other leg and then meet me in a waistband video.